guys what we've got, and looking forward to getting your feedback on that as well. Natalie will run you through the system itself. I just wanted to kind of give a bit of a background of why we're doing this, and kind of really kind of just try and display some of the kind of bad points that are out there under GDPR, and hopefully give you guys a kind of piece of saying, look, this is something that can be done. So bear with me. I'm just going to close something on my screen so I can see what's going on. So if we know all the scaremongering that's been happening over the time with GDPR. Hopefully, most of us would have seen the headlines. You know, those headlines are kind of going, you know, everyone's going to have huge fines, etc., etc. And we've also seen how a lot of businesses seem to be really unprepared for when this lands in May. I guess a lot of businesses have thought it doesn't really affect me, but we've seen it from both UK businesses and US businesses, where from one side they kind of came and said, look, we're probably not going to have this from because it's you know, Brexit is here and we're going to move out of you know, from European legislation. It's pretty clear now from the government. I know that there's still some grey areas, but if we look at GDPR is here and it will be here to stay. It's replacing the Data Protection Act, which you know, let's be honest, it all needed to be updated. It came into play in 1984, so the world's moved on, especially electronically. So you know, we need to really take that to the next level. Yeah, are you controlling the slides, Nat? Sorry, guys.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Someone whizzing through. So in that side, what we're trying to put in place is don't wait. You know, a lot of businesses we're saying, and we're even seeing it. I'm doing quite a few GDPR seminars, even with some of the largest organisations in the world, are basically kind of going, yeah, guys, do something about it. Maybe in, you know, as you get towards the end of the first quarter 2018, which I just think is ridiculous. You know, there's no reason to delay anything. GDPR is happening. We may as well actually remove a lot of the stress and the pain and put a process in place, or have systems that support GDPR. You know, a lot of people are going, oh, I'm not sure about my data. And it's, look, guys, this is a great opportunity to have a look at the data that you've got, make sure it's GDPR compliant. So when you do hit the ground running in kind of 26th of May, you're able to have data that you know is GDPR compliant. You know that the people that you're communicating with are the ones that have said, I'm really happy for you to contact me. Because ultimately what we want to do is have happy customers and happy prospects and people that want to buy our stuff. We know that there's a lot of things around GDPR systems. It's not just about managing the data that you've got. We're coming at it from that angle in terms of the data that I hold. Am I allowed it? Is it compliant? Can I use it? We know at the front end of this is all about protecting that data, and we definitely are, you know, and are linking up with, you know, some good security products that basically says, look, you know, can I protect the data? So once I've protected the data, am I allowed the data? And now I'm allowed the data. Can I make sure it's GDPR compliant? And now I'm GDPR compliant. What security measures do I need to in place to keep it safe and secure moving forward? So there's not just one element around that. There's a mixture of elements. So as we've, you know, we know 90% of businesses are going to be impacted this. You know, we're in an electronic age whereby everyone is communicating either via email or via web pages, via ebooks, via you know, tell it, there's a whole mix. Am I allowed this data and can I use it? 46% of businesses say they will be ready in May. You know, most of these stats have come from people like Ovum and Gartner and some of the other ones. I think that's over optimistic. I'm not sure that every business will, you know, that's pretty much half saying they will be ready. I think they'll have a component of it, but you know, you've got to make sure that you're there. This is one of the ones that I think 87% of surveyed CIOs, this came from Ovum, believe their current policies and procedures leave them exposed. I think this is where the majority of businesses are at in terms of saying, look, we know GDPR is coming. We kind of took our, you know, foot off the gas. You know, we need to get something in place because there are elements. And let's be clear, you know, there's big fines associated with this. Again, 3 out of 5 IT managers say business is not taking any steps to support with GDPR. We see a huge, you know, and the steps that people are taking, we actually see is all done on security. It's this whole thing about, okay, well, let's create, you know, Fort Knox. Let's create a big closed environment that stops people getting in and getting our data. That's only one component part of GDPR. And there's a lot of other stuff that will sit around it. This is the big stat for me when I saw this come out from Ovum a while ago, which is 52% of those IC decision makers expect they could be fined under GDPR. Let's be honest, the fines under GDPR aren't going to be small. If we look at the fine scenario, it's you know, the ICO's current maximum fine is 500,000, of which we saw Talk with their data breach get a fine of 460,000, which was the highest we've seen. If you look under GDPR, that's up to 20 million euros or 4% of global turnover, whichever is greater. You start to look at that. This is a hefty fine to be levied on businesses around the protection of users' data. And that's data, you know, as we all know, is any EU citizen. So whether I'm an American corporation, a Canadian corporation, we need to have a look. The other thing you know, we've seen a lot of, and you know, when I speak to, you know, some different businesses, they're going, oh, it's okay, because some of the big software companies and big suppliers that we use have come out with statements to say that, you know, we'll be ready for 2018. But actually, when you delve into the detail, it doesn't actually mean that they will have the software tools ready for you to use. It's saying they will be GDPR ready by 2018. So again, what we're saying is when you're talking to these firms and you're talking to your current software providers, make sure they're talking about the tools that they're going to be giving you, not that just they're going to be ready in by 2018. So, as you're probably aware, we're really serious about this. You know, I've looked at this from our standpoint and as CEO. GDPR is a big thing. I want to make sure that the data that we hold are from people or prospects that actually want us to communicate with them. So how can we get prepared? So what we've taken from our side is, within our platform, we are layering the GDPR components in as standard, so that if I'm capturing any personal identifiable information, you can have any one of those elements captured. So whether it, and that could be any piece of personal identifiable information. So whether that's a name, whether that's a direct line, whether that's their mobile number, whether that's their personal email address, whether that's ethnicity, whether that's sexual orientation, diet, anything that, you know, is covered from PII, you can then within the system trigger that to be a GDPR compliant field. And within that, once you make it a GDPR compliant field, then what will then allow you to view is, one, have I got permission to use it? So we'll have a green or red light scenario within the platform. So when you look at a field, you can see whether you're allowed to be using that under GDPR. The date of which you got that compliance is available. How did you get compliance? So was that a business meeting? Was that a telephone call? Was that an email response? Was that a newsletter sign up? Was that something they did on the website? All of those will be within the system. And then also any associated privacy statements that you've got associated with that. So all of those component parts from the GDPR will be covered by the system. So it means that whatever data you're capturing, you can easily show and report and create lists on those users that you have within the system where you are holding personal identifiable information, so that you can manage it. So if the ITO ever came asking about the processes and policies that you have in place, you can clearly report and demonstrate to them of what you do to protect those users' data that you have within it and their permission. So that's part of the tool, the standards. What we've now done is taken it a step further, and what we've realised is that that's great for when you're you're maybe starting afresh or you're adding new users into the system. But what about if I've got 100,000 users in my database already, or I've got a marketing list that I've got that I'm not sure that has got compliance? So what we are proud to announce today is that we have a GDPR CAT, or compliance application tool. I think CAT is what most people are going to be referring it to as. But this covers a couple of pieces. So Natalie will go through in the details shortly. But this will allow you to be able to verify that data that you've got. This will be an element of being able to take data from an existing system or from a spreadsheet, and then within that, we'll bring it into the portal or into the platform. The platform will then create contact out to those users, and then those users will be able to opt in and grant their permission on the data that you hold upon them. So whether that's an email address or telephone number or passport details, whatever you want to do. So that will be the point of which you contact all of your customers and ensure they come back to you under GDPR compliance. And Natalie will go into some of the complexities, but I don't want to give away too much, but she'll go through. The other side of that is around the where we see from a business perspective, as soon as the media start to fuel, the general public about saying to them, well, under GDPR, you have the right to know. You have the right to know what information businesses hold against you. We see, and I've seen talking to a lot of business, they're disregarding this. They're not factoring in the resource that's going to be required to take phone calls from their customers saying, okay, well, tell me what info you've got on me. So what we're utilizing here is actually as part of your GDPR webpage that says, this is what we're doing as an organization under GDPR, is we would, suggest that under the right to know, a user would say, okay, under the right to know, you can put in your email address. They would put in their email address. That would then come into the platform, would look up whether you hold information on them or not. If it doesn't, it will do an auto response to say, thanks for your inquiry, but we don't hold information on you. If it does hold information, what it will do is run them through a process where they will have an opt-in process. So we will then send them a secure mail to verify that it's their email address. They will then link onto the portal, and the portal will then show them the information that you are granting that they have access to. And again, at that point, they'll be able to opt in on some of that personal identifiable information. So before I jump into and let Natalie take the reins, Any questions that you guys may have, please feel free to send them in the chat, and I'll have a look at them while Natalie's chatting away. But as I said, one of the big things that we're pushing here is that, you know, we are not just saying as an organization we're GDPR ready. What we're saying is we have a practical solution to help businesses, whatever size they are, from the small to the larger enterprises. Here is a practical solution, not just talk about what you should be doing under GDPR. This is really practical solution to get you guys up to speed, and to ensure that, you know, if you ever get challenged, here is a solution that allows you to demonstrate you're GDPR compliant and be able to report on it at any point. So I'm going to hand you over to Natalie. Thanks for joining, guys, and Nat, over to you.
Great, thanks so much, Paul. So I'm going to run through at first our GDPR consent management tool, and then also that second phase that Paul was talking about, which is the CAT tool, or that compliance application tool. So starting off and looking in the system, I have two tabs open here because I'm going to toggle back and forth between a couple of different views so that you see the whole scheme of everything. But when you're navigating in our system, so this is that manual first phase process. As you're starting it all off, you jump into our integrations page, and we have a little GDPR badge. And then under this more details, there's just a section where you can toggle this enable or disable sign to enable the GDPR integration. So we've set this up as an integration so that the feature can be turned on or off depending on the user and what they're looking for. Once I jump back into the system and once I have enabled it, I'm going to then build out the system. So right now, when you enable that feature, the system automatically creates some custom fields against it so that you can start tracking this data, saying that it's GDPR compliant or not. So we're tracking and pre-populate this information for you, or pre-populate the fields, saying that you can track the marketing opt-in, which is like a yes or no, the source, any additional description details, if the contact is in contract or not, and the contract date. And you'll see where that comes into play once we get to the automation piece. But all of that information we pre-populate. But you may have types of fields that are outside of just marketing details that you need to start tracking. So right now, like if you add in the language spoken or marital status, those are also personally identifiable fields. Knowing someone's name in relation to the language that they're speaking or their name and their marital status are considered personally identifiable. So you need to store consent against that to know that, so that the individual is saying that you're able to store that information and use it basically on how you're filtering and reaching out to those target customers. So what you'll see populate here is that you can add into GDPR and make a specific custom field GDPR required. So then now when I'm on a profile page, I can store consent against that piece as well. So same will be with marital status. And if I look at a page or a profile custom field that isn't GDPR compliant, you'll just see that it is disabled. So now let's jump into a contacts profile page. I'm going to navigate to Addison McPherson's profile page. And as the integration loads up, you'll see that the GDPR compliant fields like language spoken and marital status all have these G's right next to them. And right now they're showing as gray because it's unknown if we have consent to store that data or not. So what we can do is when you click on this option, we're going to mark this information as granted or denied. And so in here, next under the consent, and this is specifically for the email address only. So I can mark consent as granted. The date and time, it pre-populates to the current date and time, but I can change this if I want to using a calendar and time clock function. I can denote the source of how I received this. I can say in person and just say she came in for a meeting, and just store this additional information and just click done. And so now you'll see that this G has turned green. If I'd marked it as denied consent, it would turn red, but you'll still see that compliance field availability there for you. So next, now that I have this consent, I may want to know and understand what privacy statement she read so that I can filter down later and say, will show me all of my contacts that are associated with version 1 of my privacy statement, because I've now got version 2 and I need to update that. So one thing that you can do in the system is actually build out privacy statements. So if I jump back to the control panel here, I can look at my custom objects, and by enabling the Gdpr integration, our system automatically creates this privacy statement object. So from within the control panel, I can view my privacy statements, and it'll take me to a list of the privacy statements that I've built out within the system. I've only done one here in the demo, but I can ultimately just add one from within the system. So I'm just established the name, and then under this GDPR details tag, I put in the date the statement was created. I have to copy paste the statement text into this field here. I can select the status, so if it's active or inactive. And again, all this information will play out later as to reading into the system when the automation comes in. And then I can define a version. So if I've already got version 1 in the system, this might be version 1.1 or version 2. To show you what that looks like once it's already pre-populated, I've got this privacy statement. It just has a standard profile page. If I can see more, I can see that entire privacy statement listed out for me. I can also store that privacy statement against a file on the profile page here. So I can have a PDF version available in case anybody wants it printed out, and it's easy, so you're not asking users to copy and paste the statement piece over here to the right. So I can create that privacy statement within the system. But now, also from within here, I can connect this participant to that privacy statement. So under this add dropdown, I'm going to see this contact accepts privacy statement connection. So by clicking on that, I'm able to locate the privacy statement in the system and connect the contact. So now I know which privacy statement she's been connected immediately to. And I didn't put in the data connection there, but if I want to quick edit that, under that other data section, I can pick the date and time that she had consented. And so that can all be stored against the same data fields that we have set up within here. So then next time when we go through this and have version 2, we can go through that same process of connecting her through the system and updating the data fields like that. So now I've got all this information stored in here, but how do I really act on it? So the next step is filtering on all of this data. All of the GDPR consent data fields, privacy statements, and contact details consent pieces are filterable or reportable. So if I want to say, show me all individuals who have a consented email address, you'll see I can leave this email field blank. I can say, show me anybody that has given me consent, and update this. Maybe I do have to put in a field here. So show me anybody with, I can just do this, but that where a value exists for that field, and it's going to pull me back everybody with an email address here. But if I want to find anybody with a consented email address, I have to type something in or denote a source, and it will filter down to that. So now I, from here, can say this is my GDPR compliant contact list. Now, this was based off of email, so maybe I'm working with an email marketing campaign provider, and then I can forward that, export this data out of the system and send it off to my marketing provider or marketing team so that they can act with our consented with individuals. Or I can do the same with a telephone. You guys didn't see me change the consent on a telephone number, but I could do the exact same thing to say, show me all consented telephone numbers, and then forward that off to my telemarketing company. So it's all actionable. It allows you to really act on then the information of those who want to be interacted with, making that time more efficient and profitable for you. All of this information is then tracked within the CRM as well. So if I add any of this, or if I'm adding Addison's information, and you saw that we just updated her consent field, you'll see here that we edited a custom connection between Addison and the privacy statement. So you'll see that there's a connection there. You see that connected Addison to the privacy statement. So all of this is auditable. So then you can see edited the email address, Natalie D. So that's what we have set up in here as the GDPR description, the date and time. And so you'll see all of that is auditable and tracked within the system. And you can do that on a profile page level or system-wide level. Back in the control panel, there's an activities log section. So that is ultimately the manual management of GDPR consent and how you're managing your population or all of your contacts. And so while the manual aspect really does meet that initial need, you may have, like Paul said, the existing large bulk amount of contacts, or you may have just gone to a marketing event and you've come back with a bunch of different contacts and you want to bulk address these individuals. So what you can do from here is actually, I'm going to jump to the right, there we go, is when you're in this system, I realize I have this shrunk down, so I'm going to make it bigger again. When I click on the integrations, the last one I had was already upgraded. But in here, if you haven't upgraded, this Go Premium, so this is just, all I've done is enable that basic GDPR consent management feature, which is available on the silver and gold plans only. Because you saw that privacy statement pop up, that's a custom object within the CRM system. So that means the feature is only available on the silver and gold plans. But the Go Premium aspect here is a add-on. So this is where that automation comes in for the system. So it's in addition to enabling this GDPR basic feature. So as soon as I click upgrade here, I'm going to now jump back into our other system. So as soon as I'm in this GDPR place, you'll see that it's changed to GDPR activated. So what it does, the system will open up and ask you to configure now your GDPR consent information and how you want to be communicating with your contacts. So this information is used when you're sending the GDPR emails from the consent or for the consent portal. So you have to define out your company details and your data protection officer details. So then when I go to click my preview section, Salpo's templated an email message. And then you can pick and choose a little bit of the information here. So how you want to change your salutation or signature here. Just saying regards, best regards, thanks, many thanks, or none. And ultimately, this is then that email that pushes out to our contacts when you're doing that automation process and obtaining their consent. So since I've already filled this out, I'm just going to close that X option. But now I'm going to jump into my contacts list here. So let's say I want to message Addison directly. I'm going to come to this more drop down. And again, you can use this for any type of filter you want to drill out. But just because I want to keep this simple for the demo purposes, I'm going to search down to one specific person. So now I've done this filter. Because I've upgraded to that automated CAT tool, under the actions, I can now send consent emails to this filtered list. So this can be filtered based off of a specific import. So we have this more drop down. And if you scroll to the bottom, you can see your system data imports. And so that will list out all the different files you've imported into the system. You can filter based off of any of those GDPR custom fields, whether they're marked as GDPR required or not. So if you remember, sorry, I'm scrolling a little quickly there. The language spoken and marital status were both GDPR compliant fields marked as compliant. So if I click on language spoken, it will give me a list of all of the languages, but then also provide those GDPR consent requirement fields. So I can say, show me everybody that speaks English that has given me consent, or that speaks English that doesn't. And then this way you can tailor some of the messages and how you send them, or even the language you're using. So Now that I've filtered down and I've identified the individual or individuals that I need to send to, under that actions, I'm going to hit send consent email, and it just asks you to confirm, and I'm going to say, yes, I confirm. So now what's going to happen is a confirmation email will be sent to myself, advising that the bulk emails were sent successfully. But then I'll also get an email, because I have this marked as her email, the email address is natalie.d@salpo. I'm going to get that email. So here's my bulk confirmation that emails have been sent successfully. And here is the GDPR consent request from the system. So the link that comes through here, and you'll see that this is the email that we built out from within Salpo. And it adds in the contact's name here. And what happens is the system will provide this link for the contact to navigate to provide their consent. And so as that loads up, and just that link that it is provided is a one-time click only. So as soon as that's clicked, the contact has that one option to navigate there. But so if you ever need to resend it, you can resend someone these consent emails as much as needed. But it is a one-time click solution. Not sure. Well, it's taken a bit. Let's try it again. Actions, send consent. So this is just a great confirmation that you can send them multiple times. I'm going to close out of that one so I don't confuse them. So here's my GDPR consent request again. You'll see how quickly that comes through. So if I just click that, it will navigate me to that click page, and it'll open up. And just to explain, what you will end up seeing here is ultimately a list of the different contact details and then a copy of the privacy statement. So earlier we were looking at the privacy statement within the system listed out in that text box. And what happens is a text box, kind of like this recent activity one, will populate. There we go. And it will show the information with a little blurb on what you're seeing and what it means and why you're reading it. Your privacy statement is shown here, and so the person just needs to scroll through that, click to say that they agree with the privacy statement. And earlier, if you'll remember, we manually marked that the email address was granted consent. So it's already showing as granted here, but now the individual needs to come through and mark if any of these other fields are granted or denied. So let's mark one as denied so you can see what that is, and then let's leave one as blank. If a contact leaves this as blank, then that just means that it will remain as unknown. And some of our upcoming features are going to address any items left as, or fields left as unknown. So there would be a no response reminder out to us and to the individual saying that, hey, you've got some contact information still here that's been unaddressed. Please log into our system. Or we can actively manage on that as well, and to say, show me anyone who has an unknown email address, telephone number, so that we can then proactively reach out to those contacts. We also have no response hard deletes business rules and the automated reoccurring consent management. So we'll talk about those in a moment. But ultimately, the customer can, or contact can just run through and define if everything is granted or denied. So a passport number can be used if I'm like a travel agency and I need to start recording that information, a driver's license in case I'm an insurance type company. There could be anything listed in here, and you can make those fields require their consent. So now I'm going to hit submit, and that's it. The person is left on this page, and once that's completed, you get this thank you for updating logo up at the top here. And now when I log back into my system, I'm just going to do a refresh here. And this, what's going to happen is the system's going to do a refresh of this page, but it's going to grab all that information that was just pushed through from the portal. So you'll see we've got that granted consent under these green G's, the red G for the one telephone number, and the address is left as unknown. And so that's how that whole process works. So the user is directed to that consent portal, basically in summary, to agree to the privacy statement, grant and deny their consent, It submits their data to update the CRM, so it's really putting the onus on them ultimately to manage their contact details, and it reflects the contact in custom fields. So this feature is basically an automated version of what you were shown previously. And those emails are sent out via a integration we've done with SendGrid. Now, SendGrid is a third party for doing email shots. And so when you log into SendGrid, this is something that you'd see as available here. Just to show you, I just wanted to show you so that you could see what this looks like from within the system, so that you can see the delivered rate, open rates, click-through rates, things like that, and how that system works. It is free up to 40,000 emails, and then after that you get 100 per day. So just depending on how much emailing you're doing, you'll be able to use this system, and then the priced plans move up from there. So if you need any assistance navigating through that, or want to learn a little bit more about what SendGrid is and how that works, don't hesitate to reach out to us and we'll talk you through some of that information. So I'm going to jump back into the PowerPoint here and just talk about the features that are going to be available by the end of November, and then some of the things that we have coming up, because this is a constant evolution of the product. So this is going to be some things that we have coming up to continually enhance this product before May comes around. Because while instead of releasing everything at once and making our contacts and customers all scramble last minute, we think it's best to proactively start managing the consent of your contacts, so then you're not stuck. And if you have any questions, again, please don't hesitate to reach out in the chat box as we're going through this, and we'll get any addressed to you as we can. And lastly, we did record today's session, so if you have need to pass this around to any other team members, don't hesitate to reach out to us. So in review, you can apply and store GDPR consent against custom fields, filter on the GDPR related consent details, fields, and policies, create and store privacy statements, connect contacts to their relevant privacy statement, review an audit trail of actions within the CRM, and an opt-in consent portal, automated consent process. And then in the next phase, we're going to be introducing business rules. So that's where that no response reminder, no response hard delete, and the automated reoccurring consent management comes in. So the business rules will address that, and it's saying that as the contract is about to expire, then you may want to reach out to those contacts proactively. So you can set some business rules saying, hey, your privacy statement or contract's about to expire. We need you to renew XYZ so that we can retain your data for next year's contract cycle. Or we've just done a privacy statement update, and then you can mass update or reach out to all of your contacts from there. The no response hard delete is if any of those fields within the consent portal have been left unknown, the companies are able to define how long they want that data to remain as unknown before it's removed off of their system. So we are also introducing the right to be forgotten. So if a contact is not in contract with you, you are allowed, the contact is allowed to request the right to be forgotten, meaning they are completely deleted off the system. All you have to retain is a name to show that you have the name and date and time that this was received, and that when you removed them from the system. And so that will be able to do through the consent portal as well. You can also view as Paul was talking about earlier, the view only profile page. So if someone ever reaches out and says, I want to see everything you have on me, you're able to give them a login into a portal view of that profile page. So when we were looking at Addison's profile page, they'd be able to see any communications, stored documents, the contact details, and then the only editable fields that they'd be able to work with are those GDPR compliant required fields. So then they can manually add that data from that view page. And lastly is the email and portal templates. So we talked about this briefly as we were going through the webinar there, but that's where you can change the signature lines or any of the data and content and uploading images against that email that is pushing out to contacts. and what they're seeing. So you'll have a little bit more control over that. For this first phase, we have templated it, but then we'll start releasing a little bit more flexibility in some of those features so that you can customize it and it really speaks towards your contacts directly. So it's a little bit more of that white labeling process, which SendGrid is also able to do. So if you want to know more, please don't hesitate to contact our marketing team with any feedback or to schedule a demo of the CRM system. We didn't really touch on the CRM today. It was purely GDPR focused. So if you do want to hear a little bit more about Salpo and who we are and what we're up to and a little bit about where we're going, don't hesitate to reach out. You can also sign up for one of our silver free trial plans, which will have access to the GDPR component. And you'll be able to start tracking and managing the consent of your contacts through that trial. And then once moving to a paid plan, all of that data will be available for you and retained there. If you're an existing client of ours and you have any questions about your current system or how this integration works and want to talk about it a little bit more, you can reach out to me directly or contact support@salpo.com, and we'll definitely get back to you as soon as possible with any different support questions that you may have regarding this specific integration or your CRM and building this out and understanding what types of fields you need to track and set up GDPR consent against. And so just as a final, I'm going to hand it over to Paul for kind of a close off of the webinar, and then we'll wrap up and address any outstanding questions that we're able to as well. And any that we don't grab and get into, we'll reach out to you directly to ensure that all of your questions are addressed. So Paul, if you have any closing statements outside of the want to know more page, that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Nat. I'll take myself off mute. Talking away there, realised I was on mute. So thanks for the padding. Yeah, Natalie, thanks for that. Great guys. You know, and I've seen some questions coming through, and I know some of the guys we're trying to get some responses out. As you say, anything that you guys you know, think about, you want to see in the product, then please reach out to us. Where we are in a you know, just like our CRM platform, we are you know, we run a continuous development process, so we're always adding in new features continuously, and we'll continue to do that whilst we you know, we get the best out of the solution. But again, I hope this has given you an insight into how we're, you know, really seriously taking GDPR and not just within our organization, but building out a really good practical tool set for businesses to use to get them up to speed. You know, let's be honest, we don't envisage that the ICO are going to become knocking on every single type of business, but there will be certain businesses that will be looked at or targeted, or it's just, you know, is having a practical solution that allows you to mitigate against the risk of, you know, the ICO coming knocking, or someone coming to you and saying, hey, guys, what data do you hold on me? You know, I know of a number of law practices who are setting themselves up for PPI, in effect, a PPI style department under GDPR. We are seeing GDPRclaims.com and all of those types of web names being taken up by organizations. So we can see that there is a risk to businesses out there, and all we're saying is, guys, you know, get yourselves a solution in place that allows you to mitigate from that. Show that you're doing best practice and you have a solution in place to help yourselves in terms of get the right data you have on the people that you want to communicate with, and you have their permission. You know, let's be honest, we all want to deal with people who want to deal business with us. You know, it's time, as us as a nation, we are great hoarders of information and everything else. This is a chance to make sure we get the best out of the information that we've got. And it gives you a chance to reach out to all of those customers and clean that data. If they don't want to know about your products and services, don't put them on your marketing list. Chance for you to clean your data. So as I said, any questions, feel free to throw them back to the 2 email addresses that you see on the screen. And what I'll do is I'll make sure that the guys will answer some of these questions that I see in the chat. But yeah, Natalie, do we want to open it up to any questions, or should we just, or do you want to leave it within the chat window? To be honest,
yeah,
I forgot how long we had the. Yeah, do you want to open it up?
Yeah, great. So I'm going to unmute everybody here. And so if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. You may not have had a chance to add it into the chat here. So I did see one question come through about the recordings. I'll be sending a recording to everybody after this. If you're on the registered list, I'll be sending that recording out. And so you'll get a copy of all of this information, as well as the questions that were addressed.
People come shy when it comes to talking. You know, they're okay on the chat windows.
I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording now too as well.